Welcome to the newest episode of Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. I'm your host, Jason Fraley, picking the brains of the top filmmakers, musicians, and artists of our time. Broadway and Hollywood star Norm Lewis performs a pair of shows at Wolf Trap this weekend. We spoke earlier this year about his stage and screen career, from being the first Black Phantom of the Opera to acting across the late Chadwick Boseman in Spike Lee's Da 5 Bloods.
I'm Audra McDonald, 6-time Tony winner. No, I'm Norm Lewis. I'm just the lowly Norm Lewis.
Yeah, just a lowly, Broadway icon. No big deal.
Exactly, yeah.
Or Audra McDonald, either way. It's your choice whether you want to do this interview as her or...
I'll go back and forth. I'll figure out which voice I'll use.
Yeah, I think we'll stick with Norm so our listeners aren't confused. You just work with Spike friggin' Lee.
Oh, is that his name, Spike?
Da 5 Bloods just won National Board of Review's Best Movie of the Year. Yeah, congratulations. Talk about how exciting it was to be on that set, and then not to mention that the eerily prescient scene of Chadwick Boseman as an angel saying, "I forgive you, blood. I died for you." I mean, come on, that's just, you can't plan for that stuff.
No, it was amazing. I mean, it was the first time I've ever been on such a big budgeted sort of project, and I've been lucky enough to do some other things, but this was like big budget, and so we were in Thailand for 3 months, and then we went to Vietnam and shot some of the exteriors there. So it was just great to be in the mix of people I admired, Daryl Lindo and Isaiah Washington and Chadwick Boseman, and oh my God, what's the musical theater guy? Clark Peters. Sorry, Clark, I love you. And to be part of that ensemble and to be led by Spike Lee, who knew exactly what he wanted, but also he was so freeing to kind of, because a lot of the lines are made up. He changed some lines in the middle of the scene. He's like, okay, stop, cut, say this. I think your character would say this. And then he would say, what would Eddie say in this moment? So a lot of the stuff was made up or we improvised. And then to be with Chadwick and him just doing everything that we did, because we were there for 6 weeks before he got there, and we had like a boot camp to learn how to shoot guns and how to hold them and how to run. We were running on terrain. He was doing exactly what we were doing and probably more. And now to know that he was sick during that whole time just was, I mean, I can't even, I just can't even. But he's definitely someone that will be remembered for that, and also Ma Rainey's Black Bottom. And I don't know. I've just been. I'm so inspired by him, even now in his demise and his death. Just to give my all now, because you just never know when your time is up. But wow. Spike Lee is a genius, and again, like I said, I felt like I was in such a safe kind of comfort zone with those veterans, and even the new person that is on the scene, Jonathan Majors, who is the son of Delroy Lindo in the show. He's going to blow up. You're going to see him just completely blow up.
Oh, he already is. I remember seeing him in Last Black Man in San Francisco
last
year, and then this year Lovecraft Country was massive.
Right, exactly. And he's been working on some, even during this pandemic, he's been working on a few other projects. I'm like, Jesus, man, but yeah, I'm very proud of the fact that we got to do what we did. It came out when it came out because it was at the height of where we were societally and politically. And I think more people saw it because of the fact that it was in people's homes as opposed to it being in the theater. So I think it was kind of serendipitous that all of this happened at once.
You bragged on Boseman and Lindo and the rest of the cast, but brag on yourself a little bit. Remind some of our listeners where you grew up. How did you get into theater? Because I know you made your Broadway debut in The Who's Tommy in like '93, but how did you get from Florida to Broadway, my man?
God, that's it's a long story. So I'll try to make it encapsulate it very quickly. I didn't know I could sing until I was 17. I ended up, I sang in choir in church, but it was just a rite of passage. I just did it because I was very much into the church. My dad and my grandfather were, leaders in the church. Then in high school, they put me in home economics for an elective. And I was like, I don't want to sew and cook right now at age 16. So I went to guidance counselor and I said, I need to get into another elective, and I said, you know what, I sing in church. I'll make an easy grade and sing in choir in school and make an A, and meet some girls and the whole thing. And that was when I had my aha moment. And I'd never sung different music in different languages. I'd never sung Broadway stuff. So it just opened up a whole new world for me. And I kept going with that, even in college, but I didn't major in music. I majored in business, but it was always a sideline. Cut to after college, I got a job working in advertising for the Orlando Sentinel, and I did that. I thought that was going to be my life, but I sang at night in different contests, or I sang at weddings and things like that. And someone saw me singing at a contest, and he was a producer for a cruise ship, and asked me after the contest. He said, "Hey, how would you like to sing on my cruise? I need someone to replace this guy who just left." And I, thought about it. I thought about it. My fiance at the time said, "You know what? You should try it. Just see what happens." My boss at work said, "You know what? You don't want to be 85 years old saying coulda, woulda, shoulda." So that's what I did. I met people who were professionals. They encouraged me to move to New York, and the rest is history.
I love it. There's so many of your shows that I want to ask you about, Broadway roles, but I'll move through them kind of quickly, really quick.
Okay.
How cool was it to play Billy Flynn in the Broadway revival of Chicago?
People always ask me what out of all the characters I've ever played, which one is closest to you? And I would say Billy Flynn, because he's such a charmer and he's such a showman and all this kind of stuff and wanting to get things done. Billy Flynn, it was a dream come true, because and I actually would love to do it again. We just haven't had our schedules match up again. But yeah, loved it.
Awesome. And then, of course, I think you've several times, right? Les Mis in the 2006 Broadway revival was one of the times you played it. How cool was that role?
You may know me from roles such as anyway.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, it was great. God, there's a long story to that, and that's I don't want to get into that right now. But luckily, I got into the show finally, and then to be asked, like, some years later, I guess 6 years later, 4 years later, to be asked to do the 25th anniversary. And then while I was there, he said, "Would you like to do the West End?" And I said, "Yeah." So I've had several incarnations of that show, and it's new each time. You find out different things about that character each time. So it was great.
Awesome. And then I believe, didn't you originate King Triton in the Disney Little Mermaid
Why,
adaptation?
yes, I did, Jason. Yes, it was an honor to be, because what I loved about Disney, and I want to give kudos to Disney, was the fact that they did see the foresight to have someone of color play that role, and it didn't matter. And I remember going in with a black man, another black man, an Asian man, and a couple of Caucasian men, and they wanted to pick from that pool. Luckily, I was picked from that, because any one of those guys could have played the part, but I was picked from that, and it did open the door, because from that moment, a lot of times, even around the country, when they did regional productions of it, or whenever they did it, whatever, they did specifically look for someone of color to play the role. Not all the time did it work out, but it did open that door. So I was glad to be the original one.
It's such a beloved part. It's cool you get to
Yeah.
play it. How cool was it to be sitting there nominated for a Tony for Porgy and Bess, just sitting there in the audience? Just what was that whole experience like? That must just be the pinnacle.
I have to give for Michael McElroy, who had been nominated before for Big River. He told me, he said, "Just breathe." He said, just slow down and breathe through this whole process, because it's going to go by so quickly, and it's exciting and all that stuff. And I was honored to be nominated to be in the show and to work with that Audra McDonald woman. She's up and coming. And
Also, you play her in an interview, I hear.
I play her in an interview. Yeah, sometimes. Yeah, that's part of my special skills on my CV. But um but it was funny, because I didn't really think I was going to win. I mean, what's his name, who for once, oh my god, I forgot, the young Steve Kazee was the front runner, and everybody was talking about him, or even Danny Burstein. I think they were talking about them in the press. So I just kind of left it alone. I just said, it's an honor to be in the room. But there was that slight moment right when they were like ripping open the envelope, and I said, what if oh my God, what if? And when they said Steve Kazee, there was a double sort of like feeling going on. I said, oh, I'm disappointed, but then, oh, thank God,
Right. That's great. All right. Well, let's do one more. You did, of course, we got to talk Phantom. Phantom of the Opera, first Black Phantom ever, I believe, on Broadway. You mentioned, how that was a pioneering thing with King Triton, but how you think groundbreaking and important was it that you paved the way in that role? I mean, that role is just one of the Broadway icons.
Yeah, it's one of those shows that I saw, I would listen to, and I was, I kept saying to myself, I want to be in this show, and actually in this role. And then I saw Robert Guillaume. I never saw him do the role, but I saw, pictures of him. I saw video of him, and so I stand on his shoulders. But I figured Robert was a star, and that was how he got it. But he also had the chops. It wasn't stunt casting. But I figured, God, I gotta be a star in order to play this role. And luckily this opportunity came about, and my brother, Hugh Pinero, we call each other brother. He was playing Phantom, and he told me early, he said, I'm going to not renew my contract. And I said, oh, great. So maybe this is a chance. And then after that, they called me in, and I just remember going into the audition with these amazing other guys that we all know. And I went in there with this feeling of, what? I felt the souls of people who were living and also passed away, of Black men who I knew, Paul Robeson, William Warfield, Andre DeShields, Ken Page, and all of them. Right before I went out on the stage to audition for Hal Prince, I felt their voices say, go get it. And I relaxed right after that, and I just did my thing. And the next thing I knew, I ended up getting it. And it was bigger than me being the first African-American to play it on Broadway. It was bigger than that, because I would meet people after the show, and they were from Brazil or Japan or China. And they were saying, now I feel like I can play the role. So I'm glad to have that distinction of being the first African-American to play it on Broadway, but it's bigger than me. And I'm glad to be the person to kind of open that door.
That's got to be a really cool feeling, especially when other people come to you and say that feedback, like, wow, you made it so I could play the role. Like, that's
right.
Unbelievable. All right, cool. Well, then in terms of locally, I know that you played Sweeney Todd back at Signature years ago, and then recently you were at the Kennedy Center for Music Man.
When I got the offer to go down there, I thought it was actually for Anthony. And I said, wow, I'm a little too old for Anthony, but I'll do it. But no, he said, no, I want you to play Sweeney. And I was like, oh, okay. And so it just kind of blossomed from that. And that really opened because I played it 3 times now. And it's because of the first time being down at Signature at that garage. You never know who you're going to work with or for later on. I remember Rob Ashford. I remember Jerry Mitchell. I remember Sergio Trujillo. All were in the chorus of shows when I was coming up. And now I'm going in front of them, auditioning for them. So be nice to everybody.
Thanks so much for joining us. Great talking to Five Bloods and Phantom and everything. That was great.
Thanks, my friend.
Thanks so much for joining us on Beyond the Fame with Jason Fraley. Remember to hit the subscribe button and give us a 5-star rating if you like what you hear. We'll see you next time. I wanted to take a second to tell you about an app I really enjoy. Living in the DC area is great, and Podcast DC gathers all of the local shows that I like all in one local app. Health, sports, local news, politics, and so much more. Podcast DC is the new local app with hundreds of DC area podcasts to choose from. I can earn exciting rewards just for listening and share the podcasts I love instantly. Available in the App Store or in Google Play, listen local with Podcast DC.